I get it, you scrolling through a dozen 75-inch TVs, trying to picture how one of those massive screens will actually fit into your living room, and you're terrified of ending up with a pricey piece of glass that just looks good on paper, but ends up being a daily frustration. You've probably asked yourself, will the picture really be that immersive? Will I actually use the voice control features, or will they just be a gimmick? And if I'm spending this much, is there a hidden downside I'm missing? Those are the exact doubts I had before I dug into the Fire TV 75-inch Omni series, and they are the reason I'm breaking it down for you today. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the size itself is a conversation starter. A 75-inch panel in a 4K UHD format promises a cinematic feel without a projector, and the Omni series delivers that sheer visual real estate. When you fire up a nature documentary, or a high-budget series that's mastered in Dolby Vision, the extra screen height really does let you feel like you're in the scene. The Dolby Vision engine expands the color gamut and contrast, so dark scenes reveal more detail without turning everything into a murky mess. In a practical sense, that means you can watch a sports game in a dimly lit room and still see the balls spin on a low light past something that matters if you're a weekend football fan who doesn't want to crank the lights. Now, let's talk about the day-to-day experience. The biggest claim on the box is hands-free with Alexa, and that's not just a marketing line. The built-in microphones sit on the lower bezel, and after a quick voice training session during setup, you can actually say, "Alexa, turn on Netflix," or "Alexa, change to channel 5, and the TV complies. It's not perfect if there's a lot of background chatter, or the TV is placed far from the central seating area. The voice command may need a repeat, but in a typical living room, with moderate ambient noise, it works reliably enough that you can keep the remote in the coffee table drawer most of the time. Setup is surprisingly straightforward for a screen of this size. The box includes 3 HDMI ports, a USB slot, and a standard power cable. You'll also find the Fire TV remote, which doubles as a voice controller. Because the TV runs Fire OS under the hood, it behaves just like any other Fire TV stick you might already own. The first boot walks you through Wi-Fi connection, Amazon account sign-in, and a quick content source scan. If you already have a Fire ecosystem like a Fire tablet or Echo devices, the TV integrates seamlessly, pulling your watch list, syncing voice profiles, and even letting you control smart lights or thermostats via the same Alexa voice you already use. The practical strengths really show up when you think about how many devices you typically have. Those 3 HDMI inputs are a blessing if you juggle a cable box, a gaming console, and maybe a Blu-ray player. You won't need an extra switch, and the TV's input switching UI remembers the last used device, so when you press the play button on the remote after a quick pause, it often resumes exactly where you left off, regardless of which source you were on. This is a real time saver compared to older smart TVs that force you through a menu every time you switch from a game to a streaming app. On the flip side, the Omni series does have trade-offs that become apparent after a few weeks of use. The TV relies on an LCD panel with local dimming, which, while decent, can't match the absolute black levels of an OLED at the same price point. In a dark room, you'll notice a slight bloom around bright objects, a halo that can be distracting during movies with heavy contrast. If you're a true cinephile who demands the deepest blacks, you might feel this shortcoming more than a casual viewer. Another practical weakness is the lack of a dedicated gaming mode. The TV's input lag is low enough for most casual gamers, but the refresh rate is capped at 60 Hz. If you own a next-gen console, and you're chasing 120 frames per second titles, you'll notice the smoothness gap. The TV does support variable refresh rate, VRR, through HDMI 2.1, but the implementation isn't as aggressive as what you'd find on a high-end gaming panel. So, for the average family that uses the console for a few evenings a week, it's fine. For a dedicated esports player, it might be a deal-breaker. Battery life isn't a concern for a TV, but power consumption can be. At 75 inches, the unit draws more electricity than a 55-inch counterpart, and the Always-on Alexa microphone does at a small standby draw. If your household is energy conscious, you'll want to factor that into the monthly bill, though the cost difference isn't huge enough to outweigh the viewing experience for most. Who should consider buying this model? If you already love the Amazon ecosystem, have an